Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 530 News.
A shocking sight in the middle of the Yellowstone River.
There were people actually in this truck when it went in the water, when it got washed away, lost control.
How did it get there? We'll tell you. Plus, a Billings woman is finally reunited with her mother.
My mom took with herself just dog and her papers, nothing else.
How she escaped war-torn Ukraine. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday evening. I'm Russ Riesinger. The war in Ukraine is now almost a month old, and more than 3.4 million people have fled their homes since the invasion began. The mother of a Billings woman is among them. We first introduced you to Yulia Johnson about 3 weeks ago as she feverishly attempted to get her mom out of Ukraine. For the first time, Arlena Howder catches up with both women as their prayers have been answered.
About 2 weeks ago, we introduced you to Billings resident Yulia Johnson. At that time, Yulia's mother was stuck in Ukraine. Her home city was being bombarded by Russians. Now, an update. Yulia's mother is safely out of Ukraine and will hopefully land here at Billings Logan Airport.
My mom says that here is very peaceful and nice. No rockets, no bombing, so it's completely different versus how it was back home.
Marina Petrusenko journeyed 800 miles from her hometown of Sumy, Ukraine, all the way to the eastern border of Slovakia. A journey that took weeks as she sought shelter in small villages along the way.
My mom took with herself just dog and her papers, nothing else.
Marina's daughter Yulia lives here in Billings and has been worried she'd never see her mom again after seeing pictures and video of her hometown destroyed by Russian troops and bombings.
My mom said it was very hard because she constantly remember her hometown, how ruined it is.
But finally, last week, relief. Yulia reunited with her mom in Slovakia.
She says that she's very happy that we reunited. We did not know if we will have this luxury to hug each other again.
But there are still many obstacles to overcome. Marina not only left behind precious memories and photographs, she also had to leave Yulia's father behind. Ukrainian men are not allowed to leave the country, so he remains in Sumy.
She said, I will stay in my apartment because if it's your time to die, it's your time to die.
Neither Marina or Yulia know when they'll see him again, and they fear the worst after witnessing the horrors of war. Marina just recently learned about a former student of hers trying to escape with his wife and child.
His family was just killed. So Russian troops killed all of them. It's like genocide of Ukrainians.
As for Marina, she escaped and is okay. She and Yulia are now in eastern Slovakia, living with other refugees. But Yulia hopes to bring her mother with her to Montana. And while life will never likely be the same for this family, they are choosing to celebrate what they do have and the people who have helped them along the way.
You can meet horrible people, but you also can meet incredible people who shows you how big our hearts can be.
In Billings, Alina Howder, MTN News.
If you were driving on I-90 through Billings today, you probably noticed this unusual scene just off the interstate, a truck stuck in the middle of the Yellowstone River. MTN's Casey Conlon takes a closer look at how it got there and the huge effort to pull it out.
Wild scenes down here on the edge of Colson Park Tuesday in Billings, where this white Toyota Tacoma behind me was almost completely submerged in the middle of the Yellowstone River.
Normally it was something that was stolen and dumped in the river and nobody involved as far as in the vehicle or anything. In this case, it was a little different.
Yellowstone County Sheriff Mike Linder has spent his fair share of time in the Yellowstone as a former diver for the department. His initial reaction when they got this call Monday night?
My first thought was I'm glad that they got out.
Linder says two young males attempted to drive the white pickup from the shore to this island bar, but couldn't handle the rising river.
Can't typically see how powerful the water is just by looking at it until you're actually in it, and by then it's usually too late.
The two got out of the water safely, but it meant Shane Weinreiss's dive team with U.S. Water Rescue had to get in. Linder says the truck floated a little downstream overnight until it got caught on these rocks and pounded by even more water.
Just since this morning, it's probably come up 4 or 5 inches just looking at the way it was sitting on the truck. You know, the truck could have settled a little bit, but the top of the box was sitting out of the water.
The dive team members attached cables to the truck. Then Anderson Towing out of Shepherd pulled it ashore, all remarkably in one piece, though there was plenty of water damage, as you'd imagine. a generally happy ending to a situation that could have been much worse.
We're coming up on dangerous parts of the year because the snow melt is going to cause the rivers to start rising, and it's getting warm outside, and people are going to want to come outside and recreate.
This is something that people try to do quite often, it seems like.
Well, more often than they should. Not only is it against the law to drive down below the watermark here and onto the island, but it's dangerous.
And expensive when you add up the damage, towing fee, and inevitable misdemeanor fine. Casey Conlon, MTN News.
Two things highlighted the weather today: the mild temperatures and wind across the eastern plains. Even by 11 o'clock, we started to see some of the wind gusts picking up 25 to 35 miles per hour. Take it ahead into the afternoon. By the time we got to 2 p.m., some of the wind gusts were 35, 40 miles per hour across the eastern plains. And here in the last little while, we're still holding on some of those stronger gusts, especially once we get off into eastern Montana, closer in towards the Dakotas. Top wind gusts today, over 40 miles an hour for Cutbank, Livingston. Some stronger gusts across the eastern plains as well. But tonight, heading into tomorrow, a quieter picture as far as weather goes. But watch this system on Thursday. We'll talk more about that coming up in just a little bit.
Last week, we mentioned that a new federal report is laying out some big potential changes for VA facilities across the country, including right here in Montana. But there's a long way to go before any of those might become reality. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian looks at how state leaders and veterans are reacting to the recommendations.
The VA Asset and Infrastructure Report is the latest step in what has been a multi-year process to catalog all the facilities the department has and figure out the best way to get them ready to continue serving veterans into the future. In Montana, the report recommends closing some VA clinics, but leaders want to make clear that right now that doesn't mean any immediate changes to their operations.
I just really want to strongly emphasize that they are recommendations. And there's a year-long review process that will be going on to determine what recommendations are sent forward to the president, and, some may not.
Dr. Judy Heyman, executive director of the Montana VA healthcare system, says the report hasn't affected how they're proceeding with updating their facilities.
We're actually looking at expanding services across the state.
The Montana VA healthcare system currently operates 19 locations across the state. The federal recommendations call for closing 4 of them: clinics in Browning, Glasgow, and Plentywood, and the Community Living Center, a nursing home in Miles City. They also include other changes, like shifting the emergency department at Fort Harrison to an urgent care center. The report says the buildings suggested for closure are seeing relatively low use, and some services can be shifted to community providers. But Glenn Charbonneau, commander of the American Legion's Department of Montana, has concerns about that approach, particularly in rural Montana.
Right now they have care in the community where they outsource a lot of things. That works for like blood tests and x-rays, but extended care, not so much. And it helps when veterans are amongst themselves a lot better than just a bunch of civilians, and not understanding perhaps.
Because the report is based on analysis that dates back to 2019, Heyman says some of the recommendations are already outdated, calling for changes that have already happened or are in the works. The Montana VA has already replaced its Missoula clinic with a larger facility, and they're finishing a new clinic in Butte to replace the one in Anaconda. They've also opened new clinics in 5 other locations in recent years, including in Bozeman just last week.
That was a form of validation about everything that we were doing.
The Asset and Infrastructure Review was set up by the 2018 VA Mission Act, a bill passed with wide bipartisan support and signed by then-President Donald Trump. But Montana's U.S. senators have both made clear they have concerns about the possibility of service reductions, and they'll have a lot to say as the process moves forward.
The report from the VA under Biden that recommends closing veteran clinics across Montana is unacceptable and shows how out of touch DC bureaucrats are with rural America. The Biden administration cannot ignore the unique obstacles that rural healthcare clinics face and must take that into consideration before closing these clinics.
Some people interpret a proposal as a termination of a building. That's not true. Now we have to hold those proposals accountable. For example, what metrics did they use? When was the surveys taken? Were docs in those offices? And then we've got to talk to the veterans in the area. Look, if they're going to use it, we're going to make sure they have the services. That's my goal.
President Biden has nominated members to the Asset and Infrastructure Review Commission, which will hold hearings on the recommendations before making final proposals. And the president and Congress could then have their own say on the proposals. That means any final decisions are likely still well more than a year away. At Fort Harrison, Jonathan Amberian, MTN News.
Still to come on the MTN 530 News here on Q2, a Montana boy can now move forward with a brand new ride thanks to a community that rallied behind him. That story next. And in sports, from a Ram to a Bulldog, Maya Hansen's high school career has wrapped up, but her future is brighter than ever. We'll hear from her in just a bit.